Hello, and welcome to our podcast. Today we're going to be talking about gun control and the NRA. To start this off, we have a guest, my brother Andrew Shalata.
Hello.
So what is your view on gun control just in general right now?
It's such an America-centric issue. Like, you don't see these problems in other countries, and for good reason. It's because they don't have a gun lobby. There's no power that's trying to keep guns in the hands of people for their own selfish reasons.
And do you believe that freedom is one of the big issues in the gun control debate?
I mean, really no. Like, when you see popular gun culture, the people toting open gun laws usually aren't big proponents of what I would consider to be freedom. They're usually, in some way, shape, or form, authoritarian. These are the people that are screaming fake news, the ones that are blindly following a leader wherever he points them. This isn't they don't really care all that much about freedom. This is something that's used to protect white America. This is very much a race-based issue as well.
How would you say it's a race-based issue?
Well, you really only see upset with gun control when it's white people whose guns are being threatened. Ronald Reagan, everybody touts him as like the great spiritual leader of the Republican Party. He himself said, Americans don't go around carrying guns with the idea they're using them to influence other Americans. There's no reason why, on the street today, a citizen should be carrying loaded weapons. And the left likes this argument a lot too, because, well, it fits their agenda, but really it was a racist epithet because the people who sparked that statement was the Black Panthers. Ronald Reagan, as governor of California, really did not like the Black Panthers, and he was very much in favor of de-arming them.
Do you believe that gun control is a matter of pushing morals on people?
Not so much. I feel like it's not that complicated of an issue of morality or anything like that. This is a tool that kills people. That is what guns were invented to do. That's why this argument is different than so many other arguments. Like, I shouldn't be expected to purchase a gun to have protection. We have so many systems in place in our country in which we don't need to all personally be armed to be protected. I've lived a fairly safe life. I haven't come across any horrific danger, but even if I did, I'm not sure a gun could help me.
And also, just like, the Second Amendment was made when a gun was loaded by one bullet at a time. It's not really about the Constitution at this point.
That's really true. Even Thomas Jefferson himself said that we should be rewriting the Constitution every so often so that it stays up to date with the American populace. Obviously, we haven't done that, and we have these people that so vigorously cling to this archaic document that even its own creator said that we should be changing. And we do change it, we do amend things. There are adjustments that are made, some things that are added, some things that are taken off. But it's not that rewrite that Jefferson talked about, and because of that, we do get this culture of being so religiously married to our history that we can't really see what's in front of us. We don't want to fix gun control because in the Constitution we have the right to bear arms, which makes perfect sense for the time period this was drafted in. The Constitution was drafted in a time when they were wary of people sailing onto American shores and basically trying to take over, and they worried that the military might not be enough to stop them, so they said, okay, citizens should be able to arm themselves to deal with, well, at their time, Native Americans, pirates, with the British when they tried to come back. But that's not the case anymore. We aren't lacking a military. The United States has the largest military budget in the entire world. We don't all need to personally be armed against invaders anymore.
And what are your thoughts right now with the Parkland shooting and what students are doing in response to it and all that fun stuff?
Oh, I'm so proud of the Parkland students. They're really taking a stand. So often we see the gun control debate slipping out of the news and then right back in as soon as another mass shooting happens, but these kids have demanded some kind of change. It's very inspirational to see.
And what do you think of Trump's response to all of this?
Despite everything, I know that he is doing what he thinks is best, but I also think he's kind of losing his mind a little bit. So what the things he's presenting aren't, I don't think they're going to solve the issues. See, that's the problem with Donald Trump. He knows the issues. He knows what the issues are. He just provides the worst possible option to fix it. The tariffs were another great example. Sure, yes, the Chinese are dumping too much metal into our country, but a universal tariff is not the way to fix that. Just the way as there's been a mass shooting, more guns is not the issue. Is not the solution, but it is the solution when you get $30 million from the NRA. See, this all makes perfect sense when you think about it from a business perspective. The NRA is actually suing the state of Florida right now so that 18-year-olds can buy guns again. And the reason is because their income is tied to people purchasing guns. Of course they're going to say, yes, the solution to gun violence is more guns, because that makes them money. That makes them obscenely rich. It's easy to follow this trail of money. And I think that's really what the gun control debate comes down to. They don't want gun control because that's going to slash their profits. This isn't about rights. They don't actually care about that. I am fully convinced the NRA does not actually care about guns as a human right. They care about their wallets getting a little bit thinner.
And what do you think about how Scripps, for the walkout on Wednesday, they changed the entire bell schedule so we could have a rally, so we can protest for 10 minutes outside, and they changed the entire week's schedule for it, completely admin hosted. They had us go to an assembly about safety and how to act during the assembly. What's your thoughts on all this?
I think that I can appreciate that the school is making efforts to recognize that this is, in fact, an issue, but I feel like they're kind of trying to dance around the real issue here. By holding a formal assembly for this kind of thing, it could help, yes, but I don't know. As a former student, I'm not quite confident in their abilities to get the proper point across. Now, a protest, a walkout, meaningful disruption of everyday activities for protest purposes. Now, that does things. That actually makes people listen. It's going to be more widely seen, and it's going to be respected a little bit more. To understand that these students are in fact angry. They're not just going along with some assembly that the school has planned. No, they're upset, and they're going to take matters into their own hands by walking out.
And what would your response be to the people who claim, like, oh, you take a plastic tip off of the AR-15, it's a completely different gun, you can get it, it's like, and the problem's pistols, not assault rifles, or much more murder from pistols, and all that kind of argument?
Well, it's just diversion tactics. That's all that is. It's people trying to spin the debate into whataboutism. What if blank happens? Oh, what if they just take off the plastic tip? What if they just modify the gun? What if they 3D print their own gun that they found off the deep web? Yes, there's a lot of what ifs, but that's never stopped lawmakers with any other issue. Once they found out, hey, there's something we can do to curb this thing we don't like, they do it. I mean, just look at marijuana laws. They said, oh, well, even though drug dealers are definitely coming in through to sell drugs, even though that's happening, they still regulated it. They still said, hey, this is illegal. Of course, as we figured out, that doesn't work. I mean, of course it doesn't work to some extent. Like, there's always going to be exceptions. Even if heroin's illegal, people are still going to get their hands on heroin. If guns are illegal, some people are still going to get their hands on guns. But there's going to be a lot less if there's stronger gun control. Just the other day, there was an attack in the Netherlands on a high school. I wouldn't say similar to the Parkland shooting. The person who was perpetrating the attack, he was mentally unstable. But because it was the Netherlands and they have strict gun laws, he couldn't have a gun. He didn't have a gun. He didn't have access to one. He couldn't just go in and buy one and then show up to his school and shoot. So he brought knives. And he was easily diverted by other students who just threw their backpacks at him. Now all of them are in a mental health program, the victims and the attacker, to realize what they've done wrong and figure out how they can get better.
The school is having us do like practice lockdowns for shooters, and they're going to do them randomly throughout next week. Tomorrow's a safety week, and they're going to do one during passing period. What's your opinion on that?
It's just, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not what we should be training for. Sure, we should always, be prepared for the worst, but we shouldn't be practicing expecting that someone is going to commit gun violence on one of our campuses. We should be dealing with the guns and not having to worry as much about what goes on in the campuses. It really is just far too easy to get a gun in the United States. I have a list with me of a bunch of our allies and what their gun control laws are. There are currently 2 official steps in the United States to get a gun. You need to pass an instant background check. That includes criminal convictions, domestic violence, and immigration status. That's step 1. Second step is buy the gun. And that's it. You will never see that in really any other developed nation. Japan has some of the strictest gun laws in the world. Just from this list, I count 13 different steps towards getting a gun, as opposed to R2. And what are the results of that? There have been virtually no gun deaths in all of Japan's history. Well, at least by civilian hands. Of course, we did whatever we did, and we did the bad thing in Japan. That doesn't count. In terms of a Japanese citizen purchasing a weapon and using it to harm masses of people, that doesn't happen. And so, what people often argue is, well, in those countries, terrorists will find other ways to harm people. It's like, yes, I'm sure they will, but they won't be able to use guns. That eliminates that as a possible danger. Like, if you think back to the terrorist organization, Aum Shinrikyo, in the 90s, they committed a terrorist attack on the Tokyo subway where they released sarin gas into the subway that killed many, many people. That wasn't a gun. Making sarin gas is incredibly difficult. It's something that usually only militaries have the resources to do. And yes, it was still a terrorist attack that killed people, but it didn't happen nearly as easily as our terrorist attacks, where you can buy a gun and 5 minutes later be shooting someone up.
What would you say to the people whose argument is that guns are necessary for fighting a tyrannical government?
Well, there's not so much to suggest to me that the people who are involved in popular gun culture would fight for everyone. The people that are pushing pro-gun rhetoric are usually, at least as intensely as they do, is militia groups. that are coming from the Midwest. They are huge proponents of gun control, and also usually white supremacists or white nationalists. They want some sort of all-white nation, just like the organization that the Parkland school shooting was allegedly a member of. They were white separationists who wanted to saw Florida off the United States to create an all-white nation. That's what they wanted. I don't believe that this tyrannical government that they speak of fighting against is really something that they would realistically fight against. I think perhaps more it's something that they're a part of. The Black Panther Party definitely wasn't, and that's why you saw gun control being a huge staple of the Republican policy, because they didn't want black people open carrying, but when it's white people, it really seems to be fine. It's a dichotomy. It's very shocking, and it's ridiculous. And it's ridiculous how many people don't see it. I actually had a very interesting argument a few weeks ago with a white supremacist. Not someone I'm claiming is a white supremacist because I didn't agree with him. He's a self-proclaimed white supremacist. And he tried to argue with me that even countries with looser gun laws, like Switzerland, they'd have very low gun deaths, so clearly it must be something else. It's not the guns. Which was hilarious and also kind of saddening, because this is an argument that gets brought up relatively often among conservatives that are proponents of free gun laws. And they don't recognize that Switzerland has more intense gun laws than the United States. You still have to be licensed to have a gun. It's ridiculous what people will try to use to fit their own agendas. Oh, the Swiss don't have gun control and they don't have any gun deaths. Well, actually, you're just projecting. You're an American, so you don't really understand what comprehensive gun laws are, because the United States has a financial blockade in between comprehensive gun laws and, well, where we are now.
We spent a whole period of class talking about school shootings and how we had this assembly about a victim of the Columbine school shooting. And all that was before Parkland. So that, on top of the in-class conversation, just really prompted us to have this conversation about gun control. Another huge issue is gun shows and the loophole of gun shows. I watched this video, and they got a 12-year-old, and they had him go into a liquor store and try to buy alcohol, and obviously he looked exactly like a 12-year-old. He looked the age, and obviously they're like, no. And then he went to another one and asked for cigarettes, and obviously they said no. Went to try to get a lottery ticket, got turned down again. Then he went to a gun show and asked for an AR-15 and walked out with an AR-15 easily. And the fact that people aren't being put on record when they get a gun, they need a record. They need more than just money to get the gun. And it's ridiculous, because that's how teenagers are able to access these. And that there should be laws regulating that. Like, people shouldn't be able to just go into a gun show and walk out. They don't even have to wait. They get the gun right there, pick it up, and leave with it. It's ridiculous. I think that after every mass shooting, after every school shooting, which happens constantly in America, literally constantly, everyone's always like, it's not the time to talk about it. And then it fades. It goes away, and then there's another mass shooting, and they're like, it's not the time. Let them grieve. Let them handle it, but it's the perfect time to talk about it. It's the time you need to talk about it. When there is a problem, you need to fix it. The fact that it happens as often as it does is ridiculous.
Yeah, you can't just put it aside. It's nothing like this is like ever like appropriate to just put aside. You gotta like focus on it. Like you should be focused on it. You should be focusing on it like before it happens. Like you can't just wait. Like not you can't just wait, but you gotta like anticipate this kind of stuff, and you gotta be more serious about these children's safeties. Like schools, they say like we'd do anything to like keep you safe. So why do we have one security guard going around in his golf cart, just driving around?
Exactly.
And like sometimes he's not even doing anything. Like you go through these assemblies, like taking up our class time to talk about safety, and you only do it because of the shooting. You should have been doing this like before. Like I don't remember this at all in like the beginning of school. Like they should be anticipating this more.
I can just like speak for myself. I don't feel safe on campus. Like I don't think that when I come to school, I don't feel safe. I know that there are easily people who would do something. I can name a list of people I wouldn't trust. And the fact that I even have to think that, the fact that that is a concern of mine is ridiculous. I'm coming here for an education. I'm coming here to grow as a person, and I'm worried about my safety.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be an issue. And the first time it happened in Columbine, in the 80s, it should have been taken care of. It should have been regulated. And it's not like we're saying, like, get rid of all the guns, pass regulations, and then you have all these people who are like, oh, well, you take a plastic tip off, same gun, different name. But you need to start somewhere with regulation, otherwise it won't happen. It's because it hasn't happened.
And if you think about it, you know, it's not asking much.
It's not at all.
It's not. It's like what you're gonna like. There's like you have to go through like a little more time.
If you're worried about getting a background check, you shouldn't have a gun.
Yeah.
If you're worried about what's going to come up, maybe you should have the ability to get it.
Well, I mean, I thought something was going to change when, after the Vegas shooting, like 50 people died. But to be honest, I forgot about it, or I stopped worrying about it. This is my fault, like 2 weeks later. And that's the whole country. But I think Trump's definitely heading in the wrong direction by letting mentally ill people, and he made it easier for them to have guns, and I don't understand what direction he's going in.
Yeah, I think also with that same, after Pulse, after the nightclub shooting, even me, as a gay person, I stopped thinking about it after a while. It stopped going through my head, and right after, of course, I was very stern on gun control and getting shit done so this stuff doesn't have to happen again. But it just fades out of people's mind because you have all these people who just say it's not the time.
And you know, we're like, it's sad to know that, you know, the world is going through all this stuff that we're just so almost used to it. You know, it's like
it's not even the world, it's just our country.
It's just our country.
It's just our country.
Specifically our country, because Australia, one mass shooting, made regulations. There hasn't been a single mass shooting since.
Yeah, we're acting like this is impossible to fix, but why can't we just be influenced by other countries too? Because this should not be a problem. I think there should be bigger problems than this. This should have already been taken care of a long time ago.
And how people are just so stern about their Second Amendment right. It's like that right was made when a gun was loaded by a bullet at a time. There was no such thing as machine guns. There was no mass shootings then. You know, it just, things have changed. Therefore, things in law that was written hundreds of years ago needs to be changed. It's not really even a question. It's your Second Amendment right, yeah, sure, have it, but you shouldn't have it unless you're qualified to. And that's not much to ask for. Asking for a background check at the least is not asking a lot.
I mean, I think it's also a part of America's like freedom ego. I think that's a part of it, and I just look back at it, and there's way more cons than pros when having an assault rifle or any kind of gun.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could think of endless things to do with it, like illegally, but probably only like one thing is, you know.
And
but-
like you like how he's saying, you said earlier, like, you know, people say like they're gonna get a gun for safety when, you know, that's not really a case.
Well, just that Trump wants experienced teachers to have guns on campus, which I disagree with.
Why?
Because I don't think adding more guns would stop gun violence, if that makes any sense.
Well, yeah, it does.
Also, I saw a lot of teachers talking on social media and just in general that they would never want that responsibility to guard students. Like, there was a college professor who was like, he loves guns, he loves shooting, he loves hunting, and he's like, I wouldn't trust myself to defend an entire classroom, and I have great aim. I don't trust that I could do that.
Yeah, and like, you know how there's like memes like on on social media where it's like, you know, kids like just being disrespectful towards teachers, like, and then them pulling out a gun. Like, that's like, that can happen. Like, these teachers aren't like the sanest people.
Yeah.
Like, you know, they like, a lot of teachers have like anger issues, and they like, and some kids feel uncomfortable like even without a gun like in their class because they feel like they're being like harassed by a teacher. Like, I'm pretty sure a kid is not going to feel more safe with that teacher handling a gun.
And just in general, because like what the students and what people of all political parties, what they want is background checks and giving teachers guns. They don't have background checks, they don't have experience, they can't do anything to someone who is being psychotic, to someone whose goal is to hurt people. They can't defend 30 plus students. That's not a responsibility they should have.
Yeah.
Well, did you hear about the teacher? Like last week, he locked himself in a classroom and he shot his gun.
What?
Yeah.
Where?
And he was like a totally normal teacher. No, he's been working at the school since like 2004, and he just locked himself in a classroom and he shot like a bullet.
Why? Like, what
No
was
one
there like?
knows. Nobody got hurt.
Oh, there was like
but-
students in the class too.
No, he kicked all the students out and he
Oh.
locked himself in and he just shot a gun. And he was so involved with the school, so he was like a announcer for like the football team. And he just like, it could be anybody. I mean,
I think that like it's so focused right now because of the school shootings. Like it should be assault rifles, it should be the AR-15, but like when you really do look at the statistics, it's pistols that cause way more murders. And no one has been saying ever, get rid of guns, take away pistols, take away AR-15s, take away that stuff. It's background checks, it's making sure these people don't have criminal records, and it's not asking much. If you can, to get a car, you need a license, you need a permit,
Yeah.
and then you need a license. You need to take 2 tests to get a license and then a car, and then they ask old people to take the test again if they're concerned about their driving. It should not be treated any different than a car.
Yeah.
In summary, gun control is a huge issue and we need to be paying much more attention to it. It's amazing that the students from the Parkland shooting are doing so much, and we all need to follow in their place because this is an issue of safety, not about freedom. Thank you for listening.